Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. I don't have to tell you, Detroit is a manufacturing city. And with this comes hazardous waste, toxic, reactive, flammable, and corrosive materials that are dangerous to people. So what happens to all this hazardous waste? Federal and state laws require facilities to obtain a license to store, dispose, or treat it. That includes EQ Detroit Incorporated, which operates a hazardous waste site in Midtown near the I-94 and I-75 interchange. Now, the company's license is up for renewal, and not all residents are supporting that renewal. But public sentiment isn't the law, says a representative from the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, or EGLE. Here's EGLE's Tracy Cuscommittee speaking at the public informational meeting on August 13th. EGLE is the state regulator that oversees these hazardous waste sites.
Just like in an air permit hearing, we are not able to say, well, this license is wildly unpopular and the community has tired of them being there, so we are going to deny the license. We would have to prove to a judge that a facility cannot comply with the law before we could deny a license.
Producer Jack Philbrandt spoke to Detroit Documenters, Colleen Sirocco and Linnell Herndon, to learn more about what community members had to say.
There's a hazardous waste site in the middle of Detroit, right at the I-75 and I-94 kind of interchange right there, kind of Midtown area. And they are up for a license renewal. Their license to operate and handle hazardous waste is good for 10 years. That 10 years has passed, and so it's just a natural time for them to be coming back for a license renewal. And so as part of that renewal process, the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, which we call EGLE, which is the state regulator that kind of oversees, hazardous waste, energy, pollution, and factories, things like that. They're holding informational meeting and then a public hearing as just kind of part of their decision process about whether or not they're going to renew this license.
What is EQ Detroit Inc.?
So it's basically a hazardous waste storage and decontamination facility. EQ Detroit is like the name, but the name of the company is called Republic Services. And they're a national company. I think they have like over 100 different sites like this across the country. It's actually 9 in Michigan. And they are sort of the ones that, are on the table for like, are you guys doing your job right? And are you fulfilling all these, environmental requirements? And they've had a lot of like issues in the past. It seems like from what they said at the meeting, everything that they've been asked to do to fix, they have fixed. But even so, there was still a lot of like critique from the community that was there. So, but yeah, basically they're the company. It's a for-profit company, so they get paid when they basically treat this hazardous waste to make it able to be disposed in a proper way.
I think part of what also could have triggered this license renewal kind of process is I think they want to expand. Is that right, Colleen?
Yeah, they do. They're basically saying like right now they're monitoring or using 3 containers and they want to go up to 6. But there's so many technicalities. Like they're like, well, they're not as big as the other ones, so it isn't really doubling the production. But there is, I think it sounds like the goal is to increase the production.
What were some of their concerns when it comes to this relicensing process in the company?
They were really pushing back on specifics. EGLE kind of responded, like they were kind of happy to have this kind of high-level conversation, but they were very like holding their feet to the fire. A lot of what they were noticing was that there was a lack of communication from Republic, the EQ Detroit facility. There had just been some incidents, like there was a fire there, like I think, maybe 10 years ago, there was some type of leakage, which apparently wasn't that bad according to EGLE, but it was like under the ground and it was just excess water. But the word leakage just kept coming up. And if it wasn't that bad, you could tell that wasn't communicated because people had a lot of skepticism and feeling like they weren't being told all the information that they deserved. The communication was probably the thing that came up the most.
Colleen, trust is built into this process. Not only residents trusting Eagle, but Eagle trusting the company to make sure they're reporting when something goes wrong. Can you kind of talk about how this was expressed at the meeting?
Yeah, basically the community doesn't trust the company to do the right thing. They think that they're, motivated by money, and that one of the things that they really talked about was how the inspection process is pretty infrequent. So Eagle is only legally required to inspect the facility every quarter, but they only do a full comprehensive inspection once a year. So the other three are, they might do a deep dive into something, but they aren't looking at the whole facility more than once a year. And so a lot of that, falls on the company to do self-reporting, to do, their own bookkeeping about what they're doing. And the community did not trust that, because who are they, accountable to? And is there any recourse if people are finding that information is not correct? These community meetings are only for certain issues. Eagle is only, has to do meetings as it pertains to the laws that they have to uphold. But Republic, the company that, is in charge of this facility, has no, real regulations on telling people what's going on in the way that they want to hear it. And Eagle that's not part of their purview. So there's basically just, there's only trust that they can have is in the company. And it was really clear from the meeting that they didn't. There was a lot of things that were coming up about insurance and how can we really get to the bottom of who's profiting and benefiting from these things, if something goes wrong. And really, really good questions. What I really like in these meetings is when people who are retired come in and talk about, I was in insurance for 40 years and I've seen this, this, and this, and this is the thing you should look out for. I love when people do that. And there was a guy at this meeting that was doing that. And it really sparked a lot of other people talking about, what is liability insurance on this place? And Eagle was looking through their notes and stuff and saying, okay, it's this much money if this happens. And I just love when it's almost like a surprise to them that someone from the community is also an expert. And I just love when they kind of come back with that. And that was one of my favorite parts of the meeting.
Colleen, there's one meeting left on September 4th. What can people expect from this meeting?
Yeah, so this meeting is actually going to be more formal. If someone comes up, gives their comment, it's received, and then they sit back down. There's not going to be a lot of back and forth. I think they did say there would be a brief discussion at the very beginning from any new things that have come up since the last meeting. But this will be a public hearing, and this is the true legal requirement for what they're doing in the process. But yeah, this one will be different, but it's still, even so, having the number of comments on the record is really important. Having the number of people in attendance is important. So even if it's not going to be the back and forth conversation, it still all matters.
Detroit documenters Colleen Sirocco and Linnell Herndon, they were speaking with the Metro's Jack Philbrandt about EQ Detroit Inc. It's a hazardous waste site in Midtown, and its operating license is up for renewal. The next meeting on this issue is September 4th at Techtown. This is the Metro on WDET. If you want to go back and listen to a conversation you heard on this show, or maybe tell a friend about something you learned on the show, we've got you covered. You can find all of the Metro conversations at WDET.org/Metro or wherever you get your podcasts. WDET's listener survey is open, and your feedback will help shape the future of Detroit Public Radio. It's fast, anonymous, and it lets us know what you love, what you'd like more of, and where we can do better. Complete the survey and you'll be entered for a chance to win a custom WDET prize pack. Visit WDET.org/survey. Coming up, Detroit is growing a citywide composting program. We'll get all the dirt from the city's Director of Urban Agriculture. That's next on the Metro. Stay with us.